Right, another update on motor speed controller project. So this is what, the 5th of, I believe it's October. October, yeah. And I have fairly recently just finished assembling all the major components for the big motor speed controller driver. You can see the three different boards. You got your main controller board that does all the control stuff. You have a little throttle here, adjusts the PWM and stuff. And then, so on the bottom, we have another teensy. So yeah, that's a teensy on top. We got another teensy on the bottom, and they're just talking to each other. And the deal is that teensy on the bottom is what's actually doing that little waveform. But this teensy is controlling that one. I'll explain that because it's kind of a funky little thing somewhere else. I think I already threw up a video on that one, and I'll probably stick it in the journal. But yeah, so that's that. And then you got a couple little switches on the side too for this and that. One's disable, one's reverse. And yeah, you went through debug this. This seems to be working just fine. Like when I tell it to output, the right signal to the different gates, it does that. Like I just showed you there, it has the whole PWM thing going on. Reads the Hall sensors nicely. He's got the Hall cables are right here. They go over to here, which go to here, which go to the motor. And then when I turn it, I have it set up so when it's on an odd or an even number index, the light turns on, just so I can see that everything's working. Now, second board over here, this board talks to this board, which is the gate driver. So it's got a couple opto isolators on there. Those are the smaller DIP 8 chips at the bottom. That's what this controls. It just turns on and off the little LEDs inside of the opto isolators. And then on top of that, we have, and everything's on the back too. On top of that, we have three DC-DC isolated power supplies, 12 volts, Texas Instrument ones. Expensive as frig, unfortunately. But those little capacitors along the side are just for smoothing, because it gets the isolation from converting it to an AC signal and passing it through a little transformer and then turning it back into DC. So that's what the caps are for. And I just mounted those on two different boards, kind of just to get a more optimal mounting, I suppose, like a smaller package because it's going to be big. And then lastly, I've had this one assembled for a while. I can't remember if I went over it in the previous video, but yeah, this is the actual gate. This is the FET board with all the big MOSFETs. TO220 package MOSFETs, pretty common. And all that does really is has a flyback diode on it, has a pull down resistor, 10K, that pulls the gate down to the ground, or the source pin of the diode, the MOSFET. So worst comes to worst, something breaks, this thing doesn't get stuck in the on position for too long or anything. Yeah. And then, yeah, that's where all these little wires are going to, is this header along the side. And then from the Hall sense cable, this board just kind of helps organize that. It just comes onto this little header right here. These little wires here go to the header here. And then the power and ground for the cable is separate from this, so it's isolated. And it has a couple pull-up resistors on the bottom here, because the way the Hall sensors work is that they pull the signal to ground. And those, I think they're supposed to be driven with 5 volts, but 3.3 works just fine, so that's what I've been using because it's what the teensy has regulated. It's what the teensy reads. But yeah, that's about it. The biggest kind of thing I needed to assemble here was the gate driver board. It's kind of big in comparison, a lot more complicated. actually pull that apart right now for you. Yeah, this was annoying. There was a lot of traces that need to be routed for this, and there you can see just a lot of the gate input resistors. So those are just 10 ohm resistors, just to provide a little bit of resistance between the driver and the gate. So the way I designed the gate driver board is to fold open like that. That's what this little header along the side is for. Right there is that just kind of holds it closed. And this was so I could open it up and work on it, but still have that kind of two-board configuration when I wanted to stick it on the breadboard. And yeah, it's a mess. You can see a whole bunch of the capacitor I've used as rails, but yeah, that's about it. I use this little bridge between the boards. Fairly easy. Yeah.